So in this next section, I'm going to set you up for these interactions, and we're going to go through the first type, which is competition as well. So there are four types of interactions among community members. You have competition, you have predation and parasitism, and you have mutualism as well as commensalism. And we're gonna go through each of these and kind of talk about them. But before that, we need to understand some various terms. Habitat is a term we're going to use, and it can be thought of as the physical surroundings in which a species can normally be found. So think about, for instance, like the normal habitat of, for instance, a hippo. Where are you usually going to find a hippo? Imagine a hippo inside your mind, and the area that is sort of surrounding them, those African wetlands, that's going to be the habitat of that hippo. We also have niche. I've talked about niche a few times in lab, but it can be defined as an organism's occupation. It means what the organism does to obtain the resources it needs to live. This can also be thought of as kind of like an organism's role in a particular community. So think about it as like an organism's job. How does it get food, and what food does it use to survive? So let's start talking about competition here for a few minutes. Our first type of interaction. So, like we talked about in lab, we have the competitive exclusion principle. Two populations compete for the same limited resource. One always outcompetes the other, and the other goes to extinction in that local area within that community. So again, two species competing for the same resource, one will always win, one will always lose and go extinct or change. So here are these a couple of paramecium paramecia, excuse me, and they're kind of put into the same container. All right, and you can see one, P. aurelia, is fine on its own, P. catadum is fine on its own, but when you put them together, one of them goes extinct. But if you put two species together, this is going to be resource partitioning, this is the next idea. If you put two species together that can kind of coexist or utilize different resources, then they can both be fine. And so this one goes down to this next level. They split up the habitat of this test tube, and they're able to both live together in harmony. So coexistence through resource partitioning refers to instances in which two similar species that use the same kinds of resources from the same habitat divide the resources up. So resource partitioning is where two species that are competing for the same thing divide the resources up so that they can both survive. Oops. And so here you have these different kinds of birds. You have a Cape May warbler, bay-breasted warbler, and a myrtle warbler. They're all living in the same trees, competing for the same scarce resource, but they've split the tree up. And so these Cape May warblers really only live on top. Bay-breasted warblers only really live in the middle. And these myrtle warblers sort of live maybe a little on the top, maybe a little on the bottom, but not in the same regions as these other birds. So this is resource partitioning. So the next section, we're going to talk about predation and parasitism.